My sister slept with my fiancé, and they thought I'd stay silent forever. I'm Laura. I used to believe that family would never betray you. I used to believe that love was a safe harbor, and I used to think I wasn't strong enough to survive any of it. But then I learned, when you're pushed to the edge of pain, you're left with only one choice: stand up and take back control of your life. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's the journey of a woman from brokenness to rebuilding to returning everything with quiet pride. And I want to tell it one step at a time. Chapter 1. I thought I was prepared. I stood in front of my father's casket, hollow inside. People murmured their condolences around me, but I couldn't hear a word. The sound of my own heartbeat drowned everything out. The white flowers draped around the casket did nothing but make the pain feel more vivid. He was truly gone. Then I heard it, the unmistakable click of high heels, and a perfume I knew far too well. My entire body tensed before my brain even registered what was happening. Vanessa, my sister. She walked in stunning as ever, like a living portrait of glamour at a funeral. A black Chanel dress hugged her perfect figure, platinum blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, makeup flawlessly done. She even made grief look somehow luxurious. My poor little sister, she said, her eyes sparkling not from tears but from the diamonds in her earrings catching the light. Still single at 38. Meanwhile, I have it all: the man, the money, and the mansion. I looked at her silent. Every word she uttered sliced through me like a blade, but I had waited 4 years for this moment. I smiled. Have you met my husband? Vanessa's face froze for a split second. Her smile vanished. Her hand gripped her glass tighter as her eyes followed where I turned. He emerged from the crowd, poised, confident. His gaze softened as it landed on me, like the whole room disappeared, and I was the only real thing that remained. Vanessa was speechless. I saw her lips tremble. Her eyes gave her away, utter panic, when she realized who he was. I had never seen Vanessa scared before, and in that moment, I knew the balance had shifted. No screaming, no insults, no lowering myself. Just one sentence. Have you met my husband? And the perfect world Vanessa built inside her delusion began to crack. She came here to humiliate me at her father's funeral. But what she got was an introduction from the very woman she once thought she had crushed. I looked her in the eye, not with hatred anymore, but with calm. Because for the first time in 4 years, I was no longer in pain. Chapter 2. Before everything fell apart. I used to think I was lucky, not the won the lottery or got a surprise promotion kind of lucky, but the quiet kind, the kind of luck that feels like being in the right place at the right time with the right person. I met Darren at a fundraising gala for children with cancer. I remember it was lightly raining that night, and I almost didn't go because a marketing campaign had just missed its deadline. But I told myself might as well show up out of courtesy, and then I saw him. Darren was standing by the bar wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. The lights hit his sharp nose and piercing eyes just right. He wasn't movie star handsome, but captivating in a different way, confident, grounded, the kind of man who knew exactly what he wanted. When a mutual friend introduced us, he shook my hand and said, I've seen your eco-home campaign. Brilliant work. You truly have vision. I could only smile, slightly flustered. Very few men ever started a conversation with me by complimenting my work instead of my looks, and that made me feel seen, truly seen. We started dating, then fell in love. Everything moved quickly but never felt rushed. Every conversation peeled back another layer of connection. Darren listened, really listened, asked smart questions, and had this way of making me feel like I was the only woman in the room. 3 months in, he took me to meet my father. And strangely enough, my dad liked him right away. The two of them talked investments, whiskey, and golf like old friends. Dad looked at me and said, This one's a good guy, and he's crazy about you. I remember blushing awkwardly, smiling. But deep down, I felt peace. For the first time, I thought, this is it. This is the man I'm going to build a life with. When Darren proposed at a waterfront restaurant in Vancouver under candlelight with a chocolate mousse cake that had "Will you marry me?" written in strawberry sauce, I didn't hesitate. I had been waiting for that moment for so long. All I could do was cry and nod over and over again. The ring wasn't huge, but it was elegant, simple, just like me. And Darren said I chose it because it reminded me of you, graceful and enduring. From that day forward, I entered the blissful world of being a bride-to-be. Guest lists, wedding dresses, cake tastings, flower arguments with the planner. It was all a haze of excitement. There were nights I sat alone watching my ring sparkle under the desk lamp, dreaming about the ceremony where my father would walk me down the aisle to music. And Vanessa, my sister. At first she seemed genuinely happy. She hugged me tightly when I told her about the engagement, laughed so hard when I recounted how Darren took me skiing for the first time, and we both ended up tumbling down the slope. She even said, "I knew you'd get married soon. Smart women never stay single for long." And I believed her. Of course I did. I always thought that between me and Vanessa there were small disagreements, some fights, but we were still sisters. The only one who shared a room with me for 15 years growing up. The one who bandaged my scraped knees when I fell off my bike. The one who held me through the night when Mom passed away. So when Vanessa offered to help with the wedding planning, I didn't think twice. "You're too busy with work. I've got time. I'll handle the venue and photographer, okay?" I nodded, so grateful. Vanessa became my main wedding companion. She knew I preferred hydrangeas over roses, knew I didn't want an open bar that ran too late, knew I hated EDM at weddings. She seemed to know me better than I knew myself. But what I didn't see was the way she looked at Darren whenever he walked into the room. Not obviously infatuated, but attentive, curious, subtle, so subtle. But looking back now, I see it. The way she touched her hair when he spoke. The way she laughed a little too loudly at a joke that wasn't even funny. The way she always seemed to show up when I wasn't around, as if by chance. Once I came home earlier than expected and found Vanessa sitting with Darren at a cafe near my place. They said they were discussing wine options for the wedding. I didn't question it. I truly trusted them so much that I didn't see it coming. While I was planning a wedding, they were planning a betrayal. Chapter 3, The Cracks No One Noticed. At first, it was just little things. Things I told myself I was being overly sensitive about. Every bride gets tired and stressed before a wedding. Right. Darren started working late more often. Nights that used to be Netflix and spaghetti turned into short messages like "caught up in a meeting," "eat without me." Sometimes I'd cook his favorite beef stew, then sit alone at the table, staring at the empty chair, whispering to myself, "Hang in there. Just a few busy weeks. It'll be different after the wedding." But it wasn't different. Darren's phone suddenly became something he wouldn't let out of his sight. Late night messages, short calls on the balcony. Then he'd come back in and say exhausted clients being impossible. They changed the whole proposal again. I nodded. Because I used to be busy too. I knew how work could drain all your time and patience. But what I didn't understand was why the scent on his collar wasn't mine. I always wore a soft vanilla fragrance, but this one spicy jasmine and something darker, more seductive, wasn't mine. The first time I noticed it, I had just picked up his suit from the dry cleaners. I asked. Darren laughed. Must have been that client who bathed herself in perfume. I laughed too, because what else could I do? Then Vanessa started showing up more often. She began dropping by Darren's office with coffee and pastries. She emailed him about wedding photos instead of emailing me. When I asked, she just smiled and said, "You're so busy. I'm just taking these off your plate." But I started to feel like a stranger at my own wedding. Vanessa knew the color of the table linens, the shape of the bouquet, and even the opening song before I did. Every time I offered input, Darren would just smile and say, "Vanessa has a point. Let her handle it." Little by little, I stopped being the bride. I was just the one being married. I remember one night I asked Darren, "Do you still love me?" He paused for a few seconds before replying, "What kind of question is that? Of course I do. You're just stressed. Maybe I was stressed. Maybe I was starting to doubt myself, losing the confidence that had always been my strongest trait." Then one night, I opened my email intending to check the pricing lists from the invitation vendor and saw a strange draft folder. Inside were emails between Darren and an address, beginning with the initials VCs. My heart skipped a beat. I clicked it open. Just a few lines. Nothing explicit. Just, "Last night was amazing. Please don't feel guilty. I understand. I always understand you." I read it again and again, trying to come up with another explanation, some gentler theory. Maybe it wasn't Vanessa. Maybe someone else had the same initials. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then I scrolled to the bottom. There was an attachment, a receipt from a small boutique hotel 20 minutes outside the city center. Reservation under Darren Mitchell. Date one of the nights he claimed he had late meetings. I don't remember what I did next. I don't remember when I shut the laptop. I only remember the next morning looking in the mirror and not recognizing the woman staring back. Same brown eyes, same familiar black hair, but the look in her eyes was gone. I fell silent. No screaming, no confrontation, no drama. I watched. I stepped back. I stopped asking Darren or Vanessa questions. I started asking myself, why am I not doing anything? Why am I letting them steal my dream without a fight? And then something stirred inside me. An awakening. I would not beg to be loved. I would not cling to someone who didn't deserve me. I would wait. Wait for the right moment, so that when the truth came to light, I wouldn't be the broken one. I would be the one who walks away, not the one who gets pushed out. Chapter 4. When the door opened. My world collapsed. I don't know why I decided to leave the office early that day. Maybe it was the throbbing headache that refused to go away after a tense meeting. Maybe it was intuition, that hazy gut feeling we often ignore, until it proves right. I ordered Darren's favorite Thai takeout, packed it carefully, and drove to his office. I thought he's going to be surprised. It's been a while since we had dinner together. Maybe this meal would soften things again. I entered the familiar office building. The receptionist gave me a polite nod. "He's still upstairs. Door's open." I smiled and thanked her, stepping into the elevator, Thai food in hand, already picturing Darren's smile when he saw me. Maybe everything I'd been suspecting was just in my head. Maybe all it would take was one dinner, like old times, and everything would go back to the way it used to be. God, I wish I had been right. His office door was slightly ajar. The light was on. I heard voices inside. Darren's voice and a woman's. I paused outside the door, not sure if it was curiosity, suspicion, or fear. "We can't keep doing this," Darren said. His voice sounded tired, conflicted. "It's only 2 more months," the woman replied, soft as breath. I didn't wait another second. My hand pushed the door open, and time stopped. Vanessa was in Darren's arms, his shirt already unbuttoned. Her dress, the one I remembered complimenting, was pulled down past her shoulder. The scene before me was unmistakable. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Only the crash of the Thai food hitting the floor broke the silence. Yellow curry spilled across the office carpet. The once comforting scent that used to remind me of cozy dinners together now made me want to throw up. Vanessa scrambled to her feet, yanking her dress up. Darren panicked, fumbling for his shirt. "Laura, I can explain, I didn't hear the rest." My hand reached for the engagement ring, not with hesitation, but with clarity. I took it off and placed it on his desk, the very desk where just minutes ago he was undoing buttons while betraying me. The soft ting as the ring hit the glass surface echoed like thunder inside me. A final crack that shattered every last illusion I had left about the man I was going to marry, and about the sister I once trusted with my life. I turned and walked out into the hallway. Darren's voice called after me, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I only remember my legs trembling, but somehow pain itself kept me moving. I took the elevator down, crossed the parking lot, and opened the door to my old Civic. In the trunk were 3 suitcases still waiting to be moved into our new home. I'd planned to finish unpacking them over the weekend. I drove away that night. I didn't return to the shared apartment, didn't text anyone. I took nothing but my clothes, some savings, and a dignity that had just been trampled. I drove for 14 hours straight. No music, no food. I just needed to go. Anywhere but the graveyard of the life I thought I had. And when the morning sun streamed through the car window, I realized I was in Seattle. Not because I had friends here, not because a job was waiting. I chose it because it was the one place I had never been hurt. Seattle was a blank page, and I, a woman betrayed by the 2 people who were supposed to love her most, was holding the pen. Chapter 5. Rebuilding from the Ashes. I arrived in Seattle on a gray September morning. The sky was cold and damp, the kind of weather most people hated, but for me it felt like a gray blanket being laid over the past, softening everything that had been screaming in my mind. I rented a tiny run-down studio on the outskirts of the city, just enough space for a single bed, a small desk, and a wobbly chair. The wooden floors creaked with every step, and the radiator wheezed like it was dying, but to me it was freedom. No one knew I was here. No Vanessa. No Darren. No engagement announcements, no guest lists, no pitying stares. Just me, and a mirror facing the bed that I didn't yet have the courage to look into. I found a job at a small bookstore near the university. Hourly pay, no benefits, no stability. But there were books, the smell of old pages, the chime of the front doorbell whenever someone walked in, and most importantly, there was silence. There, I wasn't the girl who got left before the wedding. I was just Laura, the new hire, the one who wrapped books neatly and always smiled at checkout. At first, I could only sleep 3 hours a night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Darren and Vanessa like a scene stuck on a loop. Some nights, I woke up gasping, heart pounding in my chest, fingers clutching the bedsheet like I was trying to hold on to a memory that hadn't shattered yet. I started keeping a journal, not to tell a story but to survive. Each night before bed, I wrote something, anything that came to mind. From a customer paying entirely in coins to the quiet triumph of going a whole day without crying. Once I wrote today, I saw a little sparrow on the balcony railing. It was tiny soaked, but still standing firm in the wind. I wonder if that bird were me, would it keep flying? I also started therapy. Dr. Chin, a sharp-eyed older woman with a voice soft as breath. During our first session, I said nothing. Just sat there staring at the pale gray carpet, wondering why I even came. She didn't push. She simply asked Laura, if your pain were a box, how heavy would it be? I replied, heavy enough that I can't breathe. She nodded and said, then we'll unpack it layer by layer. Not to throw it away, but to learn how to carry it and still live. I didn't believe I'd make it. But I kept showing up week after week. Then one day I caught myself laughing genuinely when a little boy who frequented the store asked to pre-order Harry Potter because you know the character names better than my mom. I started drinking coffee again, took walks in the park on weekends, bought a new shirt sky blue, a color I used to love but avoided for years because Darren once said it made me look pale. Now no one gets to tell me how I look. I made friends with Ruth, an eccentric older woman who came into the store hunting for vintage detective novels. One day, when she saw me quietly wiping tears behind the counter, she shoved a chocolate bar into my hand and said, you don't have to be strong all the time, but don't let sadness define who you are. And I realized I had started rewriting my own story. No longer the victim, no longer the betrayed bride. I was Laura, a woman learning to stand again. Not to get revenge, but to live a life no one else had the right to touch. Chapter 6. When someone arrives not to save you, but to gently stay. I met Marcus on a Tuesday afternoon on a day that felt like any other. He walked into the bookstore while I was rearranging the romance novels. Tall, composed, neatly dressed in a simple charcoal shirt and round-frame glasses. He went straight to the counter and asked me for Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I said, "There's one copy left in the psychology section, but the cover's a little scuffed." He smiled. A soft smile, warm like morning coffee. A little scuff is good. Feels like someone who read it before left something behind. I don't know why that sentence made something inside me soften. Maybe because for the first time in a while I felt seen. Not dramatically, not intrusively, just gently. That day he bought 2 more books. He came back the week after, and the week after that. Each time he picked books in the oddest way. Not by genre, not by author, but by feeling. Once he picked up a war novel and asked, "Does this one have a sad ending?" I think I need something that breaks my heart a little. I laughed. And somehow I found myself looking forward to every Tuesday. Not because I was falling in love, but because someone made me feel alive again. Over time, we started talking more about books, about the weather, about small things like how the maple tree outside the shop turned color earlier than last year. One day when the shop was quiet, I asked, "Why do you keep coming back here? There are much better bookstores in Seattle." He paused for a moment, then said, "Because this place doesn't make me feel lost. And the woman who recommends books here seems to read moods, as well as she reads titles." I didn't know what to say, but something inside me stilled in the nicest way. We started seeing each other outside the shop. Coffee at first, then walks in the park. One day he invited me to a black and white photography exhibit, and we spent over an hour just staring at a photo of a woman turned away, standing in the middle of an empty room. I said something in her shoulders. Makes me feel like I'm looking at myself. Marcus didn't ask questions. He simply nodded. "You've carried more than your share." I paused. "You just called me you in the familiar sense." He smiled gently. "Sorry. It just felt more personal that way. If you don't mind." I didn't mind. In fact, I felt warm. Marcus never rushed. He never touched me unless I reached for him. Never asked about my past unless I offered. He came into my life like autumn rain, quiet, gradual, but soft enough to ease the calluses that betrayal and time had carved into me. I told him about Darren and Vanessa late one night as we sat on my balcony drinking red wine and eating cold pizza. I didn't cry, I just spoke, piece by piece, fragments I had hidden away for too long. He didn't interrupt, didn't get angry on my behalf, didn't pity me. He simply took my hand and said, "It was cruel what they did to you. But what's even more incredible is that you're still here whole in your own remarkable way." We started dating officially after 3 months, and a year later he proposed. No flowers, no candles, no lavish dinner. Just a Sunday morning, me in my pajamas, hair a mess, grumbling about spilling milk on my shirt. He knelt down, held out a simple ring, and said, "I know I can't make you forget what you've been through, but if you'll let me, I'd like to help you write the rest kindly, slowly, and completely." I laughed, then cried, then nodded. This time there was no elaborate wedding gown, no endless guest list. Just us in a friend's backyard barefoot on the grass reading vows we had handwritten ourselves. I thought, that would be the quiet, full circle end to my story, peaceful, complete, until the day my father died. And at the funeral, Vanessa appeared again. But this time I wasn't the Laura from 4 years ago, and Marcus, the man she was about to face, was not just my husband. He was part of a truth I knew would send her falling, with no one left to catch her. Chapter 7 turns out he knew them all along. A week after our wedding, Marcus and I moved into a small house in North Seattle, a place with a lavender-filled yard and the sound of birdsong waking me up every morning. Everything felt new, felt strange, felt light. We rarely spoke of the past anymore. I thought that was the best way. Let what's old stay buried in the dark. Marcus never asked further about Darren or Vanessa, and I never needed to retell wounds that had already scarred over. But there was one thing that always lingered, a small, persistent itch in the back of my mind. Marcus had never once asked who Darren was. Not even once. Even when I told him about the betrayal, the name passed like a forgettable character in a story. I assumed he didn't care, or that it didn't matter to him. But now looking back, I realize it was intentional silence. I only began to understand everything when I stumbled upon a folder in Marcus's desk drawer. I was looking for a utility bill when I found a gray folder labeled Mitchell Tech, Case 2017. Mitchell Tech, Darren Mitchell. I opened it. Inside were corporate merger analyses, board meeting transcripts, and a few printed news articles from 5 years ago. One headline jumped out at me: Mitchell Tech's big win acquires AlphaCore in just 3 weeks. AlphaCore was Marcus's startup. I sank into the chair. I remembered him once vaguely mentioning his first startup, just saying it didn't work out the way he'd hoped. He never told me why, and I naively never asked. I held the folder in my hands, heart pounding. Something had just been unearthed. A dust-covered layer I thought I had long buried. That night after dinner, I handed the folder to Marcus and asked, "You never told me about this." He didn't flinch, didn't panic. He just looked at me, exhaled, and nodded. "I knew Darren long before I met you." Mitchell Tech was AlphaCore's biggest competitor. Darren was the one who pushed my company into a forced acquisition. I was silent. My stomach tightened. "So, when you met me, you already knew I was his ex-fiancé." Marcus looked straight into my eyes. Not a single blink of hesitation. Yes, from the very first time. A chill ran down my spine. "So, was all of this just some kind of revenge plan?" He shook his head, his voice low but firm. "No, I was curious when I first met you. But after the second time, the third, after seeing you cry over a poem, watching you be kind to that little boy who always buys comics, seeing you stay late shelving books and still smile at the cranky old woman, I knew you weren't someone to be used. You were someone I wanted to walk beside, not a pawn in anyone's game. I wanted to believe him, truly. Then why didn't you tell me from the start? Because I didn't want your past to define you. And I didn't want my pain to interfere with the happiness you were building." We sat in silence for a long while. I thought about everything about Darren, about Vanessa, about the strange alignment of fate, how someone once betrayed could end up loving someone who had been destroyed by the same man. And I realized Marcus didn't come into my life for revenge, but his presence, his connection to the story was part of a justice the universe had quietly arranged. A piece of a larger puzzle, one I hadn't been able to see before. I looked at him and said, "I'm not angry, but I need you to promise me one thing. I'm listening. When I see them again, and I will, you let me decide how this ends. No stepping in for me, no deciding for me. I want them to see the woman they lost the chance to walk beside." Marcus smiled. "I don't need revenge. You're already the answer." And I knew. That moment was coming soon, because my father's funeral had just been scheduled. And on the guest list, I saw 2 names I thought I had erased from my life: Darren Mitchell and Vanessa Campbell. This time, I wouldn't run. I wouldn't stay quiet. I wouldn't bow my head. I would show up as someone who had once lost everything and came back to reclaim it all on her own terms. Chapter 8. Introducing my husband to the one who stole my ex. I thought I'd be nervous. I thought my heart would race as I stepped out of the car heels, clicking against the cold stone outside the funeral home. But I wasn't. I was calm, eerily calm. Maybe because pain had long since been replaced by something else power. The room was packed, soft lighting, the faint scent of lilies drifting through the hush, interrupted only by quiet sobs from people in black. I walked beside Marcus, his hand holding mine, not tightly, not possessively, just enough to let me know I wasn't alone. I saw Darren first. He was near the casket arm, linked with Vanessa, my sister. Once my flesh and blood, once my best friend, and once the woman who stole everything I thought would last forever. She turned. Our eyes met, and in that split second I saw the cracks beneath her flawless makeup, the crumble beneath her manufactured confidence. Vanessa smiled, that same smile that once made me feel small. You came. I thought you wouldn't dare show your face. I smiled back, steady, unhurried. Have you met my husband? I turned slightly. Marcus stepped forward. The light caught his velvet black suit, his composed face, unshaken, unbothered, as if nothing in that room could touch him. Darren froze. His face went pale like he'd seen a ghost. Vanessa's hand trembled slightly, but she forced a smile. Oh, Marcus, it's been a while. Marcus gave a small nod. Polite, no bitterness, no malice, just the quiet grace of a man who had already won without even fighting. You're Marcus Dalton, Darren stammered. Yes, Marcus said. I used to be the CEO of Alpha Corps, but now I'm Laura's husband. The room seemed to pause. I stood there, looking at Darren, the man who once broke me, now drenched in sweat, eyes wide with panic, in a room full of people. He had once believed I would always be the loser. He was wrong. This was your plan, wasn't it? Darren snapped. You married him just to spite me. For revenge. I raised an eyebrow. Revenge. You really think you matter that much? Silence. All eyes turned to us. Vanessa stood frozen. Her lips quivered. Then, barely above a whisper, she spoke Laura. You knew about Alpha Corps, he told me, I said. But what's more important isn't the past. It's that he never hurt me the way the two of you did. And even with every reason to seek revenge, he chose love instead. I took a step closer, staring directly at my sister, the woman who once told me I was too weak to keep a man. Do you know what the best part is? I said. That I didn't have to lower myself to keep anyone, that I never had to steal someone else's to feel worthy. I saw her eyes fill with tears, but I didn't let myself soften. I had forgiven them long ago, but that didn't mean they'd ever be allowed back into my life. I came here to say goodbye to my father, I said. Not to reenact old tragedies, but if either of you still think I'm the naive girl you once crushed, I'm sorry you're living in the wrong decade. I turned. Marcus followed his hand on my back, steady grounding like the woman I had become. As we stepped out of the funeral home, I didn't feel heavy, not angry, not smug, just free. I didn't need to scream in their faces, didn't need to expose their lies, didn't need to destroy them the way they once destroyed me. All I had to do was stand in front of them, calm, proud, unshaken, with a life they would never have. And I knew that was the victory. Chapter 9, Forgiveness Doesn't Mean a Welcome Back. I thought that was the last time I'd ever see Vanessa. But a few weeks after the funeral, just as I was about to close the bookstore, the bell above the door rang. I turned, and there she was. No makeup, no designer dress, no smug smile. Just Vanessa, my sister, with a tired face and red, sleepless eyes. Before I could say anything, she spoke first. Can you not kick me out just yet? I nodded, even though my heart immediately braced for an emotional collision. I locked the door and motioned for her to sit on the stool by the counter. We sat facing each other. No words for a long time. Finally, Vanessa took a deep breath. I know I have no right to show up here, but I need you to hear me, just once. I didn't nod. I didn't object. I just looked at her silent. I didn't love Darren, she said, voice cracking. Not the way you did. I raised an eyebrow, not out of surprise, but because I couldn't tell if it was the truth or just another last-minute excuse. I was jealous of you, she continued. All my life, Dad praised you more. Mom only remembered your birthday. You were always composed, graceful, successful. And me? I was the mess in the background. Darren wasn't someone I loved. I just wanted what you had. I wanted to know what it felt like to be the one chosen. I let out a soft laugh. not out of humor, but because everything she said now was too late. So I asked, "Are you happy with what you with Tim?" Vanessa bowed her head. A tear dropped onto the back of her hand. "I have nothing now, Laura. Darren left me. He used my money on a failed investment. The house is mortgaged. Business partners walked away after a recording of me bad-mouthing Dad resurfaced. I've lost everything." Silence blanketed the room. Only the ticking of the clock broke it. "And you think you came here for help?" I asked. Not sharply, just clearly. "No," she shook her head. "I don't expect help. I just want you to know I can't fake it anymore. And if one day you find it in yourself to forgive me, I hope you do it for you, not for me." I looked at her, the one who was once my sister, my friend, and then my betrayer. I remembered us whispering ghost stories under the blanket. I remembered holding her when she cried over a failed test, telling her, "It's okay. You'll do better next time." I didn't know what to name the feeling inside me. It wasn't full forgiveness, but it wasn't hate either. You know, Vanessa, it took me 4 years to learn how to live without you. I don't resent you anymore, but I don't need you back either. I don't hate you, but I don't believe you've changed. And that doesn't make me petty, it makes me grown. Vanessa began to cry, but this time I didn't hold her. I didn't wipe her tears like I once would have. Instead, I stood up and walked to the door, opened it gently. "You can go now," I said. She stood, stepped out, paused at the top of the stairs, turned back to me. "Do you think we'll ever be sisters again?" I shook my head, smiled softly, sadly. "No, but I think we both deserve to move on in our own directions." The door closed behind her, light as air, and I realized forgiveness isn't letting someone back in. Forgiveness is when you can close the door and feel no weight in your heart. Chapter 10. I didn't seek revenge. I chose myself. One early morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The air was crisp, and the smell of coffee drifted gently from the machine across our small kitchen. Marcus was still asleep, his face peaceful, one arm resting lazily over the pillow, his breath steady like a quiet song I never thought I'd get to call my own. I stepped out onto the balcony. Seattle was cloaked in its usual morning mist, but today something felt different. I held a warm cup of coffee in my hands, looking down at the small garden where I had once planted lavender, a flower I believe would never bloom in a place so rainy. Yet it grew. It bloomed. It smelled sweet, just like me. I used to think I needed revenge to feel free, that the only way to heal was to make others hurt the way I did. But I've come to realize true justice isn't about inflicting pain. It's about no longer needing their pain to validate mine. Vanessa hasn't reached out since that last time. Darren has vanished from my world like he never existed, and me, I'm still here. No bitterness, no regrets. No need for anything more than this life I now call my own. I walked back inside and opened my laptop. A blank page stared back at me, and I typed, "I'm Laura, 38 years old, once betrayed, once abandoned, once stripped of everything I believed was mine. But I'm still here, not a victim, not someone standing in anyone's shadow. I am myself whole, complete, and in need of no one's permission to exist." I saved the file and shut the laptop, because I knew I didn't need to keep writing for anyone else to read. It was enough that I knew I was living a life I had chosen. Marcus woke up not long after. He wrapped his arms around me from behind while I made another cup of coffee. "You're up early," he murmured. I turned, resting my head against his chest. I wanted to live slowly today. He smiled. "Then let's live slow. There will still be challenges in life. But I'm no longer afraid, because I've already lost everything and still found my way back to myself. And that wasn't revenge. It wasn't some grand finale. It wasn't dramatic destruction. It was a quiet triumph, beautiful and unshakable in ways no one can ever take away. I don't need them to pay. I don't need to lower myself just to win. Because when I walked out of the pain calm, free, and whole, I had already won. This isn't the story of a victim. It's the story of a survivor, of a woman who dared to walk away, dared to choose herself, and dared to start over in the most beautiful way possible. Thank you for listening. If you've ever been hurt, betrayed, or thought you weren't strong enough to make it through, remember this: you don't need revenge to prove your worth. You just need to live a life where they no longer have the power to hurt you. This is Scarlet Vows, where women don't just retell the past, they rewrite themselves.